Good evening everyone. In previous class we have read about the skeletal muscles, about the skeletal systems, about the properties of the bones, about the total number of bones, type of bone tissues, and today right now what we are going to study about the bone marrow. What actually bone marrow is? Actually, bone marrow is a soft spongy. What actually bone marrow? Bone marrow is a bone marrow. Bone marrow nothing but a soft, spongy tissue. Soft, spongy tissue. Found actually where it is we can found into a certain bone holes. Okay. So, if it is a bone, it is a bone, here we can found a whole number of bones. In previous class we read out the type of bone tissues. Okay. Type of bone cells. So, type of bone cells, if you seen my video, so there is a two types of bone cells. One is a compact bone, outer layer, compact bone, and second one is a spongy bones. Okay. So, spongy cells. In here, into the bone holes, we found another soft tissues. It's called the bone marrows. Okay, it's called the bone marrow. Here is a found a bone tissues. Okay, spongy. It's called the bone marrows. Okay. Now there is a types of bone marrow. How many types of bone marrow? We have to read about the types of bone marrow. There is mainly two types of bone marrow. Number one, the red bone marrow, and number two, the red bone marrow, and number three, yellow bone marrow. Okay, red bone marrow and yellow bone marrow. And if we carefully observe the red bone marrow and yellow bone marrow, then red bone marrow is an active bone marrow. Okay, it's a very vital thing. Active bone marrow, and yellow bone marrow is an inactive bone marrow. Why it is inactive bone marrow? Because yellow bone marrow, carefully mind it, yellow bone marrow, it store fat. Okay, yellow bone marrow is store fat. That's why yellow bone marrow is inactive bone marrow, or color is yellow. Okay, so in bone marrow, in red bone marrow or myeloid tissues, bone marrow actually in another tissues came here, we have to read out about the myeloid tissues. And myeloid tissues, what is the function of red marrow? Red marrow, nothing but red marrow only for responsible for the red blood cell, producing the red blood cell. Bone marrow, red bone marrow, responsible for the producing red blood cell. And red blood cell producing red blood cell is known as hematopoiesis. And hematopoiesis, actually hematopoiesis is also known as or will also act as producing red blood cell. Okay, red blood cell. Okay. So after formation or after produce red blood cell, what are the function of red blood cell? Not only the red blood cell, actually not only the red blood cell, it is the producing the whole blood cells. Okay, producing the whole blood cell. Here red blood cell, here WBC, that's mean white blood cell, WBC, and here also platelet also. Okay, platelet also. So if related in related to red blood cell, what are the red blood cell does? The red blood cell, actually red bone marrow does the producing blood cell. okay, and producing blood cell also known as the hematopoiesis, okay, and hematopoiesis is also produce the by the hematopoiesis also produce the RBC, by the hematopoiesis also produce the white blood cell, and by the and also platelets, and also platelets. Actually, in location, it about the location where actually red blood cell, where actually white blood cell, where actually platelet cell actually we can found. We can found the red blood cell. We can found in the bone, red bone marrow in flat bone. In flat bone, we know about the 5 types of bones. In today, we learn something about also types of bone also. Okay. Flat bone. Actually, what actually flat bone? Flat bone is the pelvic, sternum, ribs, and skull. And that is the main things. That is the important things you might found in the various competitive examination. The where actually red bone marrow is found. You can give. You can found the options. You can got the options: pelvic, sternum, ribs, skull, etc., etc. You have to go through these ones. The red blood cell, actually red blood cell, not only red blood cell, the red bone marrow found in flat bone, actually pelvic, sternum, ribs, and skulls also. Okay, epiphysis of the long bone, epiphysis of the long bone, epiphysis of the long bone, femur and humerus, epiphysis of the long bone. And what is the color? Actually red bone marrow, that means it is a red. It is very clearly understand that red blood cell, that means it is red. Okay. Red blood cell, that means it is red. So, in presence of hemoglobin rich in the blood, actually we read out in the class 9 or 10, I think, okay, 9 or 10, we have to read out the why blood is red, why blood is red, due to the hemoglobin rich blood and hematopoietic cells, Why blood is red? That's mean due to the red blood cell and due to the hematopoietic cells. Okay, that means we got the various point about the red bone marrow, what are the function of red bone marrow? Red bone is responsible for the producing red blood, producing blood cell. And how many blood cells is there? Red blood cells, white blood cell, and platelet also. Okay, so and location where we can found the red blood cell? Actually flat bone, the pelvic, sternum, and skulls, sternum and skull. Okay, there is a skulls. And epiphysis of the long bone, epiphysis of the long bone. If it is a bones, then there is a part diaphysis, and here is a epiphysis. Okay, here is a epiphysis. Okay, epiphysis. Okay, so all those things. Right now. So here come the MCQ question, lots of MCQ question we will get in examination, like what is the responsible for the bone marrow, okay, what types of blood cells also, and what is the location of the bone marrow, epiphysis, what is the location of epiphysis or femur or humerus also. So what is the color and what cause, and what is the cause, what is the cause of color of red bone marrow. So you have to answer the hemoglobin rich in the blood and hematopoietic cells. Okay, so it's all about the red bone marrow or myeloid cells. Okay, 2-3 questions came here, also came here. Okay, and about the yellow bone marrow, what actually yellow bone marrow? Yellow bone marrow is mainly stored in the fat. In previous early actually in starting my video, I said that why yellow bone marrow is inactive? Because it store fats. Okay, and adipocytes, and serve as an energy server, and found in mostly modular cavity of the long bones, like modular cavity. We can found the yellow bone marrow in the modular cavity like femur and tibia. And yellow bone marrow due to high content of fat. Why its color yellow? Because high content of fat. Because yellow bone marrow also contain the fat, also store the fat. Okay, and it is the very interesting thing. Yellow bone marrow can convert as blood loss and anemia. blood loss or anemia. Okay, blood loss and anemia, and blood loss and anemia is related, and blood loss is also related with the aging, you know, aging, with the aging. So whenever a man became aging, whenever a man became older, then yellow bone marrow it's convert to the black to red bone marrow, okay. So let's yellow bone marrow, it is a function storage fat, location, what is the location, medullary cavity of the long bones, and color due to the high fat content. Actually yellow bone marrow store in the fat of the fats, storage in the fats, okay. And it is a summary table. If you carefully observe the summary table, actually the type and function and in allocation in the adult and color. The red bone marrow, what is the red bone marrow actually? Red bone marrow, what is the function of red bone marrow? True, red bone marrow actually red bone marrow responsible for the red blood cell production of the blood cell production, not only red blood cell, WBC and platelet also. And flat bone, what is the location of the flat bone? End of the long bone, and its color the red. Why red? It is because due to hemoglobin, okay. In yellow bone marrow, the fat storage and energy server. In yellow bone marrow, the fat storage and energy server. In diaphysis. So diaphysis, a long bone and yellow bone marrow, okay. The fat storage energy server. The yellow bone marrow actually yellow bone what actually yellow bone marrow? Yellow bone the fat storage and energy surveyor. And stop, a long bone marrow it is. And classification. Let's discuss all those things in a concise manner. So yellow bone marrow nothing but a adipocyte and energy surveyor, okay. Adipocytes or energy surveyor, nothing but. Location is medullary cavity, location in a medullary cavity like femur and tibia, okay. Yellow bone marrow is the high content fat, okay. It is the bone marrow and the severe blood losses and anemia, okay. Red bone marrow actually produce red blood cell, flat bone ending of the bones, okay. Yellow bone marrow fat storage the fat stops of the long bones on yellow bone marrow. Let's discuss the classification of the bone. It is very much important, It is very much important. Whenever we are studying classification of the bone, there is one question came on their heads. The bone classified according to their various shape and structure, okay. And here correct option will be according to their shape and structure, not their size, and all those things, okay. You have to mind out the bone is classification by their shape and structure, okay. By the shape and structure we classified long bone, first one is the long bone, first one is the long bone, and second one is the second one is the short bone. We found the nearly quality of the length and wide, and thickness and smallly spongy bone, okay. So spongy bone, they are like carpal, wrist, tarsal, wrist, like those of the things that is the short bone, like the short bones. What the carpal, wrist and tarsal ankle, those are the short bone. Short bone give the strength also. We very much know about that. A long bone give the strength also, and long bone give the protection also. Like femur, humerus, tibia, like femur, humerus, like femur, humerus, like tibia, all of those in the long bones, okay. And flat bone, thin, flat and often carved, like protect the internal organs, flat bone protect the internal, flat bone is the example of the skull bone, sternum and ribs and scapula, ribs and scapula, Okay, that is the flat bone. Sternum, 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 ribs, ribs, and scapula also a flat bone. Scapula, scapula also known as a beauty bone. You know about that, na? Scapula also known as a beauty bone of the bones. Okay, irregular bone like complex shape and don't fit into the other categories. Irregular bone like vertebrae, hips bone, and facial bones. It is a complex shapes that does not fit in the other categories. That is vertebrae, vertebrae. That's mean vertebrae. That's mean you have to vertebrae here. We have to vertebrae here. Total 26 vertebrae we have for a adult. Total 26 vertebrae we have for a adult. Cervical, thoracic, lumbar, sacral, and coccyx. Okay. Cervical. Oh, that is the vertebrae. Okay. Irregular bone. Irregular bone. It is irregular. A sesamoid bone. If you talk about the sesamoid bone, it's small round bone embedded within the tendon and the reduced fraction. Reduced fraction, that means tonsile. If you want, it is the tonsile force. If you go in the tonsile force, okay, tonsile force. Here is a, if it is here is a patella, the patella can observe the force of upper portion, no? Patella awards the force, and this force is also called the tonsile force. Okay, and tonsile force, not only tonsile force is observed, it is observed also, and it is helped to also reduce the frictions, reduce the friction of the joints. Okay, we read in these things, we read the articular cartilage, and articular cartilage, that type of hyaline cartilage that need to reduction the frictions of this among these joints. Okay, among these joints. So that is that we need to reduce the frictions like patella like kneecap, only the kneecap is not only the kneecap is the kneecap like patella, the bone, tendon, and the hands of the feet. Okay, so there is 5 types of bone we read out. Number one long bone, number 2 short bone, number 3 is flat bone, number 3 irregular bone, and number 3 is the sesamoid bone. Sesamoid even came under here. It is a sesamoid bone like patella. Patella can reduce the friction, patella can observe the shocks, and patella can observe the force also. Okay, and patella can force also. So today, what we are today in learning about the types of bone marrow. Types of bone marrow. Okay, there's 2 type of bone marrow, red and yellow. Why it is red? Due to hemoglobin. And due to storage of fat. Storage of fat. Okay. A red bone marrow produce blood cell. Blood cell. How many types of blood cell here? Red blood cell, white blood cell, and platelets. Okay, and platelets. Okay, and yellow bone marrow is inactive bone marrow. Okay, inactive bone marrow. Read out that about this thing. Now, if you have a bone, if a human have a bone, then a human have also the common related disease. Okay, if you have a bone, then human have also a common related disease. What are the diseases related which are very much related with the bones? Okay, and this type of disease and disorder it's mainly come in the various examinations. After discussion about the type of bone marrows and classification of the bone, now we will discussion about the common bone related disease and disorder, because some type of questions came from here in our examination. Okay. So, we have to read out all those diseases, like those who are very common in manner. Okay. So, osteoporosis actually nothing but osteoporosis. Here it is a cease, that means the decrease, na? Okay, mind it. It is a cease. If it is a cease, that means the decrease. Osteoporosis. Okay, osteoporosis, that means decrease. Decrease is like the loss of bone density. Actually, bone density is caused to strengthness of the bone. Na? If it is bone density is greater, that means bone have a strength. Still, bone have the strength. Okay. If it is a lower, that means loss of density. That if it is a weaker. Okay. In the field of physical education and sports, in the field of gym, like we have to develop the density of the bones by the exercising. Okay. We know all the physical education students. Okay. The bone density is very much important for the strengthness of the bones. Okay. And due to the bone density, bone can be fragiles, act as a fragiles. Okay. If it is the osteoporosis, if someone have the osteoporosis and someone have the osteoporosis, then the persons feel some pain, some fracture. Okay, some fracture. Like bone density is weaker, then it easily can fracture it, easily can broken down. Then what is the what is the cause of osteoporosis? The loss of bone density. Mind it, loss of bone density. Osteoarthritis, the degeneration of joint, cartilage and underlying bone. Degeneration of the joint, cartilage and underlying the underlining the bone. Degeneration of the joint, cartilage. In my previous studies, if you carefully observe my observe my lectures, so here we have to read, we actually read out the one type of cartilage that will help to shock the observed and frictions and reduce the frictions. Okay, reduce the frictions, shock the observed and reduce the friction. If it is bone and if it is a bones and there is a bones and joining together by the help of cartilage, and also ligament. In the cartilage, here is a hyaline cartilage, known as articulations. Okay, articular cartilage, known as articular cartilage. So, if it is a degeneration of the cartilage, if hyaline cartilage will degenerated by the various type of reason. Okay, you very much aware about the reason, because the degeneration of the cartilage mainly due to the synovial fluids, and synovial fluid. Why synovial fluid is less? We very much know about that the synovial fluid is less due to the inactive peoples, due to the inactive activities. Okay, due to the sedentary lifestyle. Okay, synovial fluid only produced by the exercise and by the standard diets. Okay, and due to the standard diets and synovial fluids, and due to the standard diet and exercise, synovial fluids will not produce. Okay. So, in case of degeneration, degeneration, the osteoarthritis will occur. And if osteoarthritis will occur, the person's joint pain, stiffness and reduced mobility also, stiffness also occurs, joint pains also occur, reduced mobility also occurs. Okay. Then other types of things, types of disease like rickets. Ricket actually mainly occur in the child. Okay. Softening of the bone due to the vitamin D, like due to the deficiency of vitamin D, rickets will occur. Okay, due to the vitamin D efficiency. And why vitamin D efficiency is occurred? Due to the sedentary active, mainly due to the sedentary active, because vitamin D, we can get vitamin D by the sunlight. Through the sunlight we can produce vitamin D. Okay, vitamin D is observe our skin, and the skin will able to production the vitamin D. Okay, and ricket, the bone pain and bow leg and delayed growth also occurs in the vitamin D's. Okay, osteomalacia, one type of other type of in adult. That's mean in children we found rickets. In children occur rickets, and in adult osteomalacia. Stiffness of the bone due to the poor bone mineralization. Due to the mineral, the osteomalacia occurs due to the minerals. Okay, and if it is mineralizations, the bone pain and muscle or weakens. Bone pains and muscle was weakens due to the mineral, because mineral is a protective foods. Mineral is a protective foods. Well, the body building foods and protective foods, and protective food, that's the minerals. Body yielding foods like carbohydrate, protein, fat, that's the macronutrients. Okay, the body, this the muscles weaken. Muscle will weakens due to the mineralization. Okay, and Paget disease is the abnormal bone remodeling due to the enlargement and mishaps bone. Abnormal bone remodeling and bone pain and discomfort with the fractures, remodeling Paget bones. Okay, osteomyelitis, there is a bone infection usually caused by the bacteria. So osteomyelitis that's mean bacteria. Litis that mean bacteria. A fever, pain, swelling and reduction of those bones. Okay, bone fracture. What is the bone fracture? It is the break in the bone due to the trauma or the weakness of the bones. Break in the bone due to the trauma or weakness of the bone. Trauma, break the bone. There is various types of break bones, like various type of bone breaks, like various type of fractures, pain, reswelling, bursting of the inability of the bones. Okay, and all of those things, if you carefully observe, it's a very interesting. All of the things we can feel the discomforts. Okay, pain, swelling, that is a fever, pain also. It is not important things, but important in the cause of the bone fractures, cause of the osteomyelitis, cause of the Gigot figus, cause of the osteomyelitis. That is the causes. You have to remember the causes actually. Bone cancer ki? Bone cancer, what is the bone cancer? Bone cancer or osteosarcoma. Bone cancer and osteosarcoma. Sarcoma is the fluids. Tumor of the bone disease and bone pain and swelling the pictures. Okay, and the arthritis. Arthritis, that's mean the inflammation of the joints, and it also, if you carefully observe, that it also inflammation is also due to the synovial fluids. Synovial fluids. Inflammation. What inflammation occur? Inflammation occur when its friction is increases, when shock absorb is not working. That's mean inflammation will occur, and joint pain, swelling and discomfort and deformities also occurs. Okay. Osteogenesis nothing but a genetic disorder to causing by the brittle bones. Genetic disorder. It is the genetic disorder, osteogenesis imperfecta. Okay, is causing by the genetic disorder. Which of the following bone disorder caused by the genetic disorder? We have to insert the osteogenesis. Okay, and fragrant fracture sort of the structure by bullous sacral. Okay, scoliosis, kyphosis and lordosis. Scoliosis actually sideways. Actually, is if you like this one is the scoliosis. Okay, like C shape, that is the scoliosis. Uneven shoulder and hip back pains. Scoliosis. It is a very common scoliosis, very common disease. Actually, okay. So, kyphosis, hunchback. Kyphosis is known as hunchback. It is a very much important thing. Maximum number of questions is read out. What is the alternative name of kyphosis? Our kyphosis is known as hunchback, hollowback. This type of option we will get. Kyphosis is a hunchback. Kypho hunch. That's mean I was remembered these things. The kypho hunch. It's the another name. It's my names. It's my give names. Actually, I am giving the names. Kypho hunch. That means kypho was related to hunchback. A lordosis is a hollowback. Okay, that is a lordosis, excessive inward curvature of the lower back. Lordosis is the lower back. Excessive curvature is the lower back. Kyphosis is the excessive curvature in the lower back. Okay, lower back and sprintures. Okay, and gut, uric acid and crystal building up the joint and bones. A sudden joint pain and swelling and reduction is especially big toe. Okay. So right now, how many common disease we have studied? Like one is the figured diseases. 5 is the figured diseases, osteomyelitis, bone fractures, bone cancer, or bone cancer also known as the osteosarcoma. 9. Then are arthritis, rheumatoid arthritis. Osteogenesis imperfecta. 11. And 12 scoliosis, and 13 kyphosis, 14 lordosis, and 15 gout. Gout is mean the uric acid. You have to know. Gout is mean the uric acid, and crystal build up the joints and bones. If you need the repetition one, you can play back the video. You can resume the video. You can restart the video and revise it. Okay. And the 15 common disease we have read. Okay, we read out them. Okay, and from this, some types of common question we will discuss. Okay, the first question is, what type of bone marrow is responsible for the producing blood cell? What type of bone marrow producing blood cell? We read out very carefully. If you carefully see the video, observe the video, then there is the option yellow bone marrow, red bone marrow, white bone marrow, and blue bone marrow. The blue bone marrow, there is no blue bone marrow exists in the bone marrow, type of bone marrow. Two type of bone marrow we read. Number 1, red bone marrow and yellow bone marrow. And white bone marrow, not white bone marrow, white blood cell. Right? Then yellow bone marrow is yellow color. It storage fat and it's provide energy. And and red bone marrow produce blood cell, produce blood cell, produce blood cell. Yellow bone marrow what? Yellow bone marrow produce blood cell, okay. That means the responsible, which one the responsible? Option A, option is the red bone marrow is the produce blood cell. Yellow bone marrow primarily stored. Yellow bone marrow what primarily? So protein no, minerals no, water no, okay. That is a fat will store the yellow bone marrow, that's why it is an inactive bone marrow. Where red bone marrow is most commonly found in adult, red bone marrow actually most commonly found in adult, that is the flat bones. All of the flat bone we can red bone marrow, we can found the red bone marrows, okay. At birth the most bone marrow is at birth most bone marrow is red bone marrow, okay. With aging, the red bone marrow is gradually replaced by red bone marrow is gradually red bone marrow is gradually replaced by no blue bone marrow, no bone marrow. At a birth, red bone marrow. At aging, the red bone marrow is more, it is a yellow bone marrow because inactive bone marrow, okay. Femur is an example of femur is an example of long bones. Femur is example of long bone. Short bones occur in the wrist. Flat bone is the vertebra, sternum, ribs, etc. Irregular bone, that's mean vertebrae, and long bone is femur, humerus, okay. Bones, the wrist are classified, bone actually wrist are classified short bone, okay. The vertebra are example of you know about the irregular bone, vertebra are example of the irregular bone. The sternum classified as the flat bone also, Which of the following is sesamoid bone? Sesamoid bone actually is a soft observed bone, is patella. Femur is a long bone, scapula flat bone, radius long bone, okay. Which disease caused bone became brittle and fragile? Brittle and fragile is ricket due to the vitamin D, okay, due to the vitamin D, fragile. A deficiency of vitamin D in children is caused the ricket also, okay. Osteoporosis, what osteoporosis occur? You know that what osteoporosis, why osteoporosis occur? Scoliosis is means C-shaped curvature of the spinal cord. Osteoporosis due to the density, loss of density, okay. Osteoarthritis, nothing but the friction will occur, osteoarthritis, okay. Piston will occur due to the synovial fruit, Piget disease, nothing but Piget disease is the bone remodeling, actually here came from the fractures, okay. Which bone disorder? Genetic and fragile bone, genetic, osteogenesis, there is a gene, genesis, then you can remember the gene, that means the genetics, is a very important trick. Osteogenesis, that means osteogenesis imperfecta. Osteomyelitis, what? Osteomyelitis occurs in the not muscles, not cartilage, not tendon. Osteomyelitis is the bone also. What type of bone marrow responsible for the producing bone marrow? Earlier study, actually it is a repeat question, okay. Yellow bone marrow primarily store the fat. Store the fat. Why red bone marrow most commonly found in adult? Where red bone marrow most commonly found in adult? It actually it is the also it is a long question. At birth the most bone marrow is the inactive bone marrow. At birth. With aging, red bone marrow gradually replaced by, with aging, red bone marrow is gradually replaced by the yellow bone marrow. Okay. Bone of the wrist is classified as a short bone. Okay. Which bone disorder is genetic and lead a fragile bone? Is genetic and lead a fragile bone. Genetic and also bone disorder. But a genetic and lead a fragile bones is also, I think the answer will be the genetic and fragile bones. Osteomalacia, I think so, but I think it is the ricket. Osteoporosis is not, osteogenesis is not, arthritis is not. I think it is the ricket. Ricket also genetic disorder. Okay. Here is the questions. So, we are studying some short questions, some MCQ questions about this. We are studying about the common type of disorder, common type of bone disease. We study about the classification of the bone. Okay. And we also study about the type of bone marrow. Okay. And all those things you have to revise for your examination. Thank you so much. See you in next class.